Daniel Yaakov ben Yisrael Leib, also for Simcha bat Moshe and Isaac ben Moshe. Also should be the zechut for Shalema for all the cholim in our community and for the whole of Klal Yisrael. Okay, so we're going to speak a little bit about the Haggadah tonight. So every single day of our lives, we have a mitzvah of Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. We've got a mitzvah to remember our Exodus. We do this in the morning and at night in the Shema. However, on Seder night, on the night of Pesach, we have a mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. So that's different to the regular Zecher. Zecher is a remembrance. We remember the Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's throughout the year. On the night of Pesach, we have a mitzvah of Sipur, to tell over the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Now, why is there a difference? Why on Seder night do we speak about the story rather than just remember like we do for the rest of the year? So the reason for this is because on Seder night, it's the night which is designated and has special powers for us to teach our children about emunah, to teach our children about faith. And for this reason, we teach them through stories, because this is how faith is taught. Faith is taught through stories. If we note throughout the Torah, we have many mitzvot which the Torah says straight out, explicitly, as they are, or the karbanot, the Torah says it as they are. But when the Torah wants to teach us faith, the Torah teaches us in story form. We have stories about Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, all the Shvatim, etc. Because when the Torah wants to teach us faith, faith is taught through stories. So on this night, on Seder night, where we're teaching faith to our children, it has to be through story form. It can't be through just remembering the events. We have to tell the story. If that's the case, we have to see the story through Maggid. And this is a difficult task. Because Maggid is not so, the story isn't as clear as we would expect. When we sit down to read Maggid, to go through Maggid on Seder night, we're coming with the expectation to see the story and to read the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, to read the story about the exodus of the Jews out of Egypt. But when we read through the Haggadah, it's not so clear, it's not so apparent that the Haggadah is telling that story. Let's just illustrate that for a little bit. We start off Maggid. Maggid is the section of the Haggadah which is designated to tell over the story. It starts off with Halach Ma'anya, which in that paragraph we say, Kol dichven yesei v'yechol. Anyone who is hungry should come and eat. So we're starting the story with an invitation to guests to come and join us at our table. A mitzvah of hachnasat orchim. It's a very nice mitzvah. But why is that in the story section of the Haggadah? What's it got to do with the story of the exodus of the Jews out of Egypt? Then we move on. We bring a story, Ma'aseh b'Rebbe Eliezer, a story about great rabbis, great chachamim, who stayed up the whole night speaking about Yetziat Mitzrayim. Again, that's very nice to know. But surely Maggid should be keeping strictly to the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Why is it mentioning that other people have done what we are doing tonight? We know this is what we're meant to be doing. We don't need proof that other great chachamim have done the same. And then what comes next is even more obscured. It says, Baruch HaMakom Shenatan Torah. We give praise to Hashem for giving us the Torah. The Torah is surely this paragraph should be said perhaps on the Haggadah of Shavuot. The Haggadah of Shavuot is celebrating Matan Torah, Hashem giving us the Torah. Surely that's what we should be praising Hashem for giving us the Torah. Why are we making this declaration in Maggid, the section of the Haggadah which is designated of telling the story of the exodus of the Jews? Why are we praising Hashem for giving us the Torah? Then maybe we're going to settle down to start telling the story, but the Haggadah keeps on going. It seems like taking tangents here and there. The Haggadah says, Yachol Rosh Chodesh. Perhaps we got the wrong night. Perhaps we were meant to have the Seder night 2 weeks ago on Rosh Chodesh. Why are we having the Seder night 2 weeks later? And the Haggadah quickly clears up this doubt. No, don't worry, you've got the right night. You've got the right night. We're meant to be having Seder night tonight. Don't worry. So surely after we've invited our guests, we've also explained that other great rabbis have done the same thing that we are doing tonight, telling over the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. And we've also clarified that we've got the right date. Perhaps we should start speaking about the story now. But the Haggadah doesn't do that. Mitchila of the Avodah Zarah. The Haggadah first wants to tell us some family history. We come from Terach, who served Avodah Zarah, and it goes to Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, long before we went down to Egypt. Ma Bekesh Lavan says that Lavan tried to wipe us out. Again, it's nice history. It's good to know. But what does it have to do with the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim? What's it got to do with the exodus of the Jews out of Egypt? And then we come to the Pesukim, which are expounded on greatly in the Haggadah. And they deal mainly with the slavery, not the exodus. And apart from the fact that it's very difficult to know what the Haggadah wants from us with these Pesukim. I think a lot of people just make an announcement, right? We're at page so-and-so, we're going to read the Pesukim and I'll meet you on the other side. What do we take out of these Pesukim? They don't speak about the Exodus, perhaps towards the end, but the main bulk is speaking about the slavery. And finally, maybe 2 hours into Maggid, the Haggadah finally gets to the Makot, the moment we've all been waiting for. This is it. This is the Exodus of the Jews. Hashem punishes the Egyptians and takes us out. But what the Haggadah does is so surprising. We've been patient, waiting for this moment until now. Okay, we haven't complained. And then when it comes to the moment, the Haggadah does the Makot in a flash. Dam Sifadei Akinim Arav doesn't expound on them at all. Perhaps there's a machloket between the rabbis as to how many Makot were there actually in Egypt. But it doesn't expound on actually what happened like it's done on the rest of the Haggadah. Not much is spent on the actual Makot. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. And then Maggid's finished. And year after year, I'd feel that, where was that story? I'd prepare a lot every year for the Haggadah to really understand it, we're meant to live through that Exodus. We're meant to feel as if we ourselves have come out of Egypt. But when we actually do the same Maggid, where was that story? How are we meant to feel that we came out of Egypt? And the most important point is, if we explained in the beginning that the Haggadah, that we're meant to have a story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. We're meant to tell over the story of the Exodus, because that is the way to teach our children Emunah. If we don't know the story, then what Emunah are we teaching to our children? We have to know the story, and we have to understand how Maggid is telling us that story. Only then can we pass over our Emunah to our children, and only through that do we have a chance to live that experience, to feel as if we ourselves came out of Egypt. So as a disclaimer, there are many ways to address this question, but the one I'm going to offer tonight is based on someone called Rabbi Reuven Leuchter. It's my personal preference. I get a lot of satisfaction from reading through the Haggadah through his explanation. So we'll start off by saying that perhaps we were anticipating the wrong story. If we're anticipating the wrong story, if we're not anticipating the story that the Haggadah is saying, then of course we're not going to find that story, and we're not going to be satisfied through Maggid. Perhaps we're not meant to anticipate the story of the Yetziat Mitzrayim as the exodus of the Jews out of Egypt. Perhaps the story is a lot broader than just the exodus of the Jews out of Egypt. And I'd like to suggest that the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is the story about the birth of Klal Yisrael. It's about the birth of a nation called Klal Yisrael. Just as a quick indicator from the Haggadah that perhaps this is the story. Towards the beginning, it starts off, as avadim hayinu leParo b'Mitzrayim. We were slaves to Paro in Egypt. And Hashem took us out of there. A slave, an eved, a slave has got no personal identity. We were slaves in Egypt. We had no personal identity. There was no such thing called Klal Yisrael. There was no such thing called Am Yisrael. We weren't a nation. We had no identity. We were simply slaves. And Hashem took us out. By Hashem taking us out of that, Hashem gave us a personal identity. Hashem gave us the identity as Am Yisrael, Klal Yisrael. Now, the reason why I say this is a lot broader is because the birth of Klal Yisrael isn't limited to our time in Egypt. Just like in any birth of a child, it takes a pregnancy before the child is born. So too the birth of the nation of Klal Yisrael needed to go through a pregnancy before it was born. It started off with Abraham, and it took 400 years from Abraham until we actually left Egypt for that pregnancy to be complete and for the nation of Am Yisrael to be born. Now, there were two parts to this pregnancy. The first part was the people building up a unit, finding a family which is suitable to be made into a nation. Hashem did that by taking Abraham, taking him out of his family, separating him from his family who are idol worshippers. And he said, Lech lecha, go away, separate yourself. Then Abraham had two children, Yitzchak and Yishmael, had to discard Yishmael and only keep Yitzchak, refining which family is going to be the chosen nation. Yitzchak had two children, Yaakov and Esav. Esav was discarded, again refining who is this family going to be, who's going to be the chosen nation. Yaakov's children were all pure. He had the Shvatim, and they had altogether, they were a family of 70 souls. This was stage one of the pregnancy, finding the unit, finding the family who was fitting to be the chosen nation. Then they went down to Egypt in order to become that nation. And one of the Ani Ma'amin, it speaks about these two stages of the pregnancy. It says, Ani Ma'amin Shahaboreh Barach. I believe that Hashem is a boreh, he created, or manhig, and he's a leader. The boreh is Hashem created us, he created the family who was going to be the chosen nation. And then only after did it become a nation, Hashem became the manhig. Only a nation has a leader. This is part one of the story. To add an extra layer to the story, meaning the first layer of the story is to understand that the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is the birth of Klal Yisrael. To add another layer to it, we're going to say that we weren't just born out of natural means, history turning over itself. We were only created because Hashem created us. We say in the Haggadah, Ilu lo hotzi hakadosh baruch hu et avatenu. If Hashem hadn't taken us out of Egypt, if Hashem hadn't taken us out of Egypt, we would still be slaves to Paro today. It was Hashem's intervention. Hashem himself took us. And this wasn't limited again to that section of the pregnancy which was in Egypt. From the very beginning of our pregnancy, Hashem took us, Hashem created us. If we look at all the imahot, Sarah, Rivka, and Rachel, they couldn't have children. By natural means, they couldn't have children. Hashem performed a miracle in order for them to have children. Our existence is only due to Hashem's intervention. By natural means, we could never be born. Hashem intervened. Hashem created us. And then, although Abraham found Hashem, that wasn't enough. The Haggadah tells us that va'ekach et Abraham. Hashem himself took Abraham. He separated him from his family. Hashem chose Abraham. And it says, but eten et Yitzchak, he gave him Yitzchak. Ve'eten et Yaakov, and he gave him Yaakov. Hashem formed us at every stage of our journey, every stage of the pregnancy. And then we say, Yetziat Mitzrayim, Hashem sent us down to Egypt. It was Anos al pi hadibur. Hashem forced us to go down to Egypt because this was essential to our pregnancy. It was essential for us to become a nation. So these are two layers, that the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is the birth of a nation called Klal Yisrael. And the second layer was that it was all done with Hashem's intervention. Hashem did it himself. Now, why was it necessary for Hashem to do all this? Why did Hashem create Klal Yisrael? Why did Hashem have to get his hands busy? Why did Hashem have to orchestrate this nation? The reason is Hashem was looking for a nation to be his representative in this world. He wanted ambassadors in this world. Hashem wanted people who's going to represent him and teach the world what is the Ratzon Hashem, what is the will of Hashem. And we do this by simply learning Torah and performing mitzvot. Moshe asked Hashem, when Hashem told Moshe that go take the Jews out of Egypt, Moshe asked Hashem, with what zechut, with what merit did Klal Yisrael being taken out of Egypt? And Hashem said, Davar gadol yesh li al Yetziazu. There's something great in this for me, for taking Klal Yisrael out. Why? Shahari asidim lekabel hatara al hahar lesof shlosha chadashim shiatzu mitzrayim. Because after 3 months they're going to receive the Torah on this mountain. The whole purpose of Hashem creating us, of Hashem making us into a nation, was for Hashem to give us the Torah. Because it's through the Torah that we can represent Hashem in this world. We can show the world what the will of Hashem is. And just by the way, this purpose of being able to show the world what Hashem wants, we can only really fulfill that when Mashiach comes, when we're in our own country, when we are in control, and we're able to learn Torah and perform mitzvot as we wish, without anyone being in control of us. Now it comes out that our existence is contingent on learning Torah and performing mitzvot, because we weren't born by natural means. Hashem performed the miracles in order to create us. And he performed miracles in order to make us into a nation. And he did that solely with the intent that he wants a nation to represent him in this world. If that's the case, our existence is contingent on us learning Torah and performing mitzvot. Now, what's the emunah that we're teaching our children with this story? We say at the end of the Haggadah, "B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot et asmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim." We have an obligation in every single generation to see ourselves as if we came out of Egypt. Very difficult task. But perhaps if we're suggesting the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is the birth of a nation called Klal Yisrael, then what that means is at that time when Hashem created Klal Yisrael, he looked into the future and he knew how many people were going to be born. And he hand selected every single soul which he wished to be part of this nation. That means that we aren't just products of those people who came out of Egypt. Hashem chose every single one of us to be part of this nation. When Hashem created the nation of Klal Yisrael, Hashem chose every single one of us. And he chose us because he wishes every single one of us to be his representatives in this world. This is how the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is relevant to every single one of us. We said the story of the birth of a nation, and Hashem, it was his intervention. He handpicked every single one of us. Every single one of us are part of that story. Every single one of us is part of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. We may not have been physically there, but Hashem chose at that time every single one of us to be part of this nation, to be his representative in this world. We are only here to learn Torah and perform mitzvahs. We are only here to show the world the Ratzon Hashem, the will of Hashem. This is the basic story. But before we move on, every story has to have a plot. So sounds all good and dandy until now. A nation was born. But along the way, along that pregnancy, there was protests from the nations of the world. The nations of the world didn't want this to happen. Didn't want there to be a chosen nation. They didn't want there to be a nation which is going to show the world what Hashem really wants. But there was two forms of protest. There's the protest of Lavan. Lavan's protest was an unbelievable protest. He denied that there's such a thing called Klal Yisrael. He denied there's such a thing called the Jews. He told Yaakov that your sons are my sons, your daughters are my daughters. He said, I gave you my daughters and your children are through them. Everything's me. There is no such thing as a Jew. You're all the part of the family of Lavan. That's what it means as he was Bekesh la'akoret hakol. He wanted to uproot everything because he denied our existence completely. The other form of protest comes under the name Parah. Why I say it comes under the name Parah, because we have many Parahs throughout the generation. They agree that we exist. They agree that there's Jews in this world. But it hurts them that we are here. They don't want there to be a chosen nation. So they protest the fact that we're special, that we're anything better than them. And they come with that protest. But Hashem protects us from these two forms of protest. We say Hashem's a maftiach. He promises to keep us around. Baruch Shema Haftachato Yisrael. And Hashem is also a Goal Yisrael. These two represent Hashem protecting us from these two forms of protest. So this is the story. The whole story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is the birth of a nation. Hashem's intervention to create us was through Hashem, not through his messengers. The purpose of it was that Hashem wanted a nation who's going to represent him in this world. He's going to learn Torah and perform mitzvot, and that's going to teach the world Hashem's Ratzon. And we had the protest along the way, people who wanted to stop this happening. If this is the story, if we were anticipating this story, then we're going to find that the Haggadah is telling us a wonderful story, an exciting story. And every single part of of Maggid is going to be telling us this story. Now, before we go into Maggid, before we look into the Haggadah, another thing we shouldn't be anticipating, it's not a once upon a time story and they lived happily ever after story. To explain what it means by a story, and I said when I took my GCSEs, we had to write about a book called Lord of the Flies. Now, in our exam, if we just wrote what the story was, we wouldn't get any marks, because the author didn't have in mind the story that he wrote. That wasn't his intent for the reader to take out, for that to be the only thing that the reader takes out the book. The author had a theme, had a message which was running through the story, and that is what the author wants us to take out the story. As far as I remember, it was a group of boys or a group of children who got stranded on an island, and they're a group of children, everything should be fine, they should get on with each other. But throughout time, how the world as we know it, politics, wars, fights, it all manifested itself with these innocent children. And the book was just meant to be this island was a microcosm of the world. And this is what we had to write about in the book. This is what this author wanted us to understand from the book. Take any Shakespeare, any play, any book. The writer has got a theme, has got a message which he wants to say, and he writes it in the form of a story. It could be a story based on greed, a story based on jealousy. That's what the author wants to tell you. He tells it to you in the form of a story. If you want to call it that the theme that the author really wants to portray, you can call it's the story of the story. This is what a true story is. The Haggadah is the story of the birth of a nation. So we're not going to see a once upon a time. We are going to see the story of that story. We're going to see the theme, the message of the story of the birth of a nation. If we're anticipating these 2 points, we're anticipating the right story and we're anticipating what a story is, then Maggid is going to come alive, and every single part of it is going to be going to be relevant to this story. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole of Maggid. I'm not going to go through every part. I'm going to try keep just to the main points which illustrate this story in the strongest form, with the intent that once it's been illustrated, every person with this story in mind can see in the Haggadah for themselves how the Haggadah tells this story. So again, we're going to try keep this as short as possible, just to try speak out the main points. So we'll start off with Halach Ma'anya. This is the opening part of Maggid. Halach Ma'anya. This is the bread of affliction. We are saying the whole Haggadah over the matzah, and we give praise to Hashem through this matzah. But there's something interesting about what this matzah is called. In the beginning, in this first paragraph, it's called this is the poor man's bread. This is the bread of affliction. Whereas at the end of Maggid, we say matzah. Why are we eating this matzah? Because their bread didn't have time to rise, because they left in such a haste. Over there, it seems to be representing the redemption bread. Is it the poor man's bread or the redemption bread? And the answer is that this matzah represents both. Because when we're giving thanks to Hashem on Pesach, or especially through the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, we're giving praise to Hashem that He created a nation, that He created Klal Yisrael. And we understand that creation, that birth of a nation, requires a pregnancy. We understand why we had to go down to Egypt. We understand we're giving praise to Hashem for that pregnancy. Pregnancies are hard, but no one regrets the pregnancy. We are praising Hashem for that pregnancy. We are giving praise to Hashem for both the slavery and the redemption. That is why the matzah is representing both the poor man's bread and the bread of redemption. Still in Halach Ma'anya, we say, Kol dichvin yeseh v'yechal, anyone who's hungry should come and eat. Very interesting that in the story of the Exodus of the Jews, we are inviting guests. What's it doing as part of the story? We don't find it's a nice mitzvah, but it's not part of the story. And maybe we'll ask a different question. This is the only time we find where we are reading about inviting guests. No other Chag, no other Shabbat do we start our meal. We're saying anyone who's hungry, come and eat. Why is it on Pesach that we are making this declaration? Anyone who's hungry, come and eat. And also perhaps it might be more appropriate to invite them before we started the meal. Why are we only inviting them after we said Kiddush, after we've sat down? The intent of the Haggadah with this declaration of anyone who's hungry, come and eat, is the Haggadah wants to stress the point that we are speaking about the story of a birth of Klal Yisrael. Hashem took a nation out of Egypt. When as we explained, Yetziat Mitzrayim is the birth of a nation. Anyone who stood by themselves, who stepped away from community, who held themselves as an individual and they don't need anyone else, they weren't redeemed. Hashem didn't take them out. Hashem wasn't taking out a gathering of individuals. Hashem was interested in a nation. Hashem wanted a nation who was going to represent him in this world. And if a person was an individual and he separated himself from community, he didn't suit the criteria of what Hashem needed. That person wouldn't be redeemed. We'll throw in that the Rasha at the moment at this point. We're going to come to the 4 sons soon, but one of the 4 sons is the Rasha, and the Rasha asks, "Ma ha'avodah hazot lochem?" What is this avodah which you are doing? Let's explain who this Rasha is. This Rasha is not a wicked person. This Rasha performs Torah, learns Torah, performs mitzvot, gets up early, he does his chesed, he does everything right. You would never in a million years call him a Rasha. He might even have a long beard, walks around with sefarim. This guy looks in every way like a tzaddik, and he is a tzaddik. But in one aspect, he's a Rasha. And that is, he said, what is this avodah which you are doing? You, meaning you, are separate from me. The Rasha has separated himself from community. He believes that he can stand on his own 2 feet. He doesn't need anyone. What is this avodah which you are doing? But I'm okay by myself. I don't need you. What do we say to him? What's our response to him? Because you took yourself out of the klal, because you removed yourself from community, you are a heretic. The Rambam writes that anyone who removes himself from community doesn't have a portion in Olam Haba. And we tell in the Haggadah, we tell the Rasha that Ilu Hayasham, if you were there, if you were in Egypt, Lo Haya Nigal, you wouldn't have been redeemed. Why is that? Because Hashem didn't take out individuals. Individuals didn't fit the criteria of what Hashem needed. Hashem was looking for a nation. Of course, we all have an identity, but we have an identity as being part of the nation called Klal Yisrael. The Rasha is only a Rasha in this aspect that he removed himself from community, but he wouldn't have been redeemed. And this is what we're stressing at this point of the Haggadah, called Dichven Yesei V'Yechol. We're saying we're a community, we're a nation, we care about each other. Anyone who's hungry, come and eat. I care about someone else because he is part of me. If we understand that, we can explain why is this the only time that we're making a declaration that anyone who's hungry, come and eat. Because perhaps it's not actually inviting a guest. It's just trying to instill in us the point of the Haggadah, that we are a nation and we care about each other. This is the night where we're talking about this. We don't discuss this on Shabbat. We don't discuss this on other Chagim. This is the perfect opportunity. This is the appropriate opportunity to start mentioning that we care about each other. We are a unit. Okay, and then we finished off Halach Ma'anya, that now we are here, and next year hopefully we'll be in Eretz Yisrael. This is addressing the whole point that Hashem created us. Hashem created us in order to be his representative in this world. And as we mentioned, we can only be his true representative when Mashiach comes, when we are in our own land, and we can learn Torah and perform mitzvot as we wish. Only then do we really fulfill the purpose of Yetziat Mitzrayim. So that is why that is over there in the Haggadah. Okay, let's move on to Avadim Hayinu. So we'll do this quickly because we mentioned it in the introduction. So Avadim Hayinu Parabim Mitzrayim, the Haggadah is telling us we were slaves. We didn't have an identity. Hashem took us out. Hashem gave us an identity. Hashem made us into a nation. This is the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. But one thing I'd like to add on this paragraph. It says, if Hashem hadn't taken us out of Egypt, we and our children and our grandchildren would still be slaves to Paro in Egypt. Now, everyone asked the question that the Egyptians aren't there anymore. There might be pyramids from years ago, but Egypt as it was doesn't exist. The world moves on. How can we really be saying that if Hashem hadn't taken us out, we would still be there, we would still be slaves? Now the answer is, this is an unbelievable message, an unbelievable message. I misled you in the question. I said the world moves on. The truth is, nothing moves in this world. There is no such thing as evolution. There's no such thing as survival of the fittest. Nothing moves in this world unless Hashem wants to move to do so. And Hashem would only want the world to progress for the needs of Klal Yisrael. If Hashem didn't have any needs for us, chas v'shalom, then the world would be static. It would stay as it was. There wouldn't be any industrial revolution. There'd be no electricity, etc. These aren't products of professors and scientists and survival of the fittest theories. The world progresses because Hashem has needs for Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael needs the world to progress in order for us to fulfill our mission. But if Hashem hadn't taken us out, and as we explained, taking us out means making us into a nation, having an interest in us, for us to be his representatives in this world, the world wouldn't have moved on, and the Egyptians would still be there. The pyramids would still be there, would still be riding around on camels, no electricity, etc. The world would be as it is. But Hashem did choose to take us out. He wanted us to be his nation. He wanted us to be his representatives in this world. And therefore, the world progressed. The Haggadah moves on to the story of Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer. It brings the story of the rabbis who spoke about Yetziat Mitzrayim all night. Why was that necessary? So this paragraph is addressing the point that Hashem took us out. He took us out for us to be his representatives in this world. What's it addressing on that point? At the end, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said that he didn't merit to mention Yetziat Mitzrayim at night until Ben Zomar came along. And he made the drasha, he expounded on the pasuk. The pasuk says, Yimei chayecha hayamim, kol yimei chayecha halilot. From the pasuk, we see that we got a mitzvah to mention Yetziat Mitzrayim both by day and night. What is he actually saying over here? This paragraph is saying times of night and times of day represent times, yamim, the days when we have clarity, when we're living in tranquility. We feel Hashem's love. Everything makes sense to us. In those times, of course, we got a mission to live as good, upright, standing Jews, learn Torah, perform mitzvot, be Hashem's ambassadors in this world, represent Hashem in this world. But what about in the nighttime? What about in the times of the Hester Panim, where Hashem conceals his face, where we are in a deep galut, where we're suffering, where the nations hate us, and when we're being trampled on, when we don't feel Hashem's love? Perhaps Hashem has forgotten about us. Perhaps Hashem doesn't want us anymore. Perhaps Hashem doesn't want us to represent him in this world anymore. The Haggadah is telling you, no. We mentioned Yetziat Mitzrayim even baleilot, even in the night. Even when we're going through a deep galut, Hashem still loves us, and Hashem still wants us to be his chosen nation, to represent him in this world, to show the world what Hashem really wants. Even this became clear after we came out of Egypt. We went through a lot of suffering in Egypt, but Hashem wanted us to go through that. So too in all circumstances, galut, all the exiles that we go through, Hashem has a purpose for us to go through them. And Hashem still wants us to be his representatives, even when we're being trodden on by the nations of this world. This paragraph is addressing our mission in this world, that our mission to be his representatives is in times when we feel his love and times when we don't feel his love. Moving on, we say, Baruch HaMakom, Baruch Hu Shenatan Torah L'Amo Yisrael. We bring praise to Hashem that he gave us the Torah. Okay, this is, I think it's clear why this is in the Haggadah. We mentioned that we are his representatives in this world. We do that by learning Torah and performing mitzvot. If we don't have the Torah, we can't fulfill our mission. If there's no Torah, there's no point in making us into a nation. This was the completion of making the nation of Klal Yisrael. There's no point in making us if we can't be his representatives. And we need the Torah to be his representatives. So we're praising Hashem for giving us the ability to do what our mission is. This is the appropriate time to thank Hashem for giving us the Torah. Okay, then the Haggadah goes on to speak about the 4 sons. The reason why it does this is because we are meant to relive that experience of Yetziat Mitzrayim, feel as if we are part of it. Now, we can't do that with just speaking over one general story, generalized story. Other people interpret things differently, so we have to speak to each child according to the way they're able to listen. So the Torah speaks over the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim in 4 different ways. I'm not going to go through all of them. We spoke about the Rasha already, but I want to speak about just the last one, the She'enu Yodeh Lishol, the son who doesn't know how to ask. Now, the son who doesn't know how to ask is not the simple son as we always have been brought up with. He's an intelligent boy. He understands things very well, might even have a degree or 2. The only issue with him is he doesn't have questions because he understands everything. He believes that tonight we are remembering a historical event that Hashem took us out of Egypt. That's fine with him. No issues, no questions. But we say to him, no, tonight is not about remembering a historical event. We say to him, it was because of this that Hashem took us out of Egypt. This represents the mitzvot that we're performing tonight and throughout the year. Hashem took us out in order for us to fulfill the mitzvot of the Leil HaSeder, of the Seder night. We're not remembering a historical event. We are reliving it, understanding that we were created in order to perform mitzvot, because that's how we represent Hashem in this world. So much so the Haggadah carries on. This is not a new paragraph. It's part of his answer. It says, Yachol Rosh Chodesh. Perhaps we should have done this. We should have done Seder night 2 weeks ago on Rosh Chodesh. What type of a suggestion is that? That is addressing the She'enu Yodeh Lishol. He understands this as a historical event. If it's a historical event, what's the difference if we remember it two weeks ago or tonight? The Haggadah says, no, we can't do this two weeks ago. You're right, if it's 2 weeks ago, it would be remembering a historical event. We're doing it now, at the time. At the time there's matzah or maror placed in front of you. This time to tell over the story is the time where we're performing the mitzvot, eating the matzah and the maror. Because now it's not just remembering a historical event. Now it's fulfilling the purpose of that creation. Performing the mitzvot. Yachol Rosh Chodesh is part of the answer. It's not a new paragraph. Okay, then the Haggadah tells us Mitzchilah, the next part of the story. It tells us Mitzchilah of the Avodah Zarah Haravatenu. Originally, our forefathers were served Avodah Zarah, referring to Terach. The whole world had no ounce of Kiddushah in it. Yes, Abraham found Hashem, but he was very stuck in the tumah, the impurities of his family. But Hashem took him out. Hashem took him away from that impurities. Hashem chose him. Hashem made something out of nothing. There was no Kiddushah in the world. And Hashem made a holy nation out of nothing. It was all Hashem's intervention. And this is what this paragraph's telling us. It says, V'ekach et Avraham. I took Avraham. Hashem took him, not Avraham came to him. Hashem took him. And there's V'oilech. Okay, and I led him. Hashem led him. It says, V'etel lo et Yitzchak. I gave him Yitzchak. V'etel Yitzchak et Yaakov. I gave Yaakov. Okay, and it finishes off the Yaakov of Anav Yadul Mitzrayim, and Hashem sent him down to Egypt. This was all Hashem's intervention. It was all done through Hashem. It wasn't done through natural means. It was all done through miraculous means. When we say that Hashem gave them children, it's because their wives were barren. Their wives couldn't have children. Hashem gave them their children. Why is this so important? Because as we explained in the introduction, since we weren't born by natural means, we were only born because Hashem made us. That makes us contingent. And we are contingent on being the ambassadors of Hashem in this world. That is our existence is dependent on that. This is why it's so important to know that we weren't made by natural means. It was Hashem who made us. Then the Haggadah goes to the twist in the story, the plot. That Hashem stands by us in every generation, because there wasn't just one who stood up against us. Every generation we have protests. In every generation, people hate the fact that there's a chosen nation showing the world what Hashem really wants. They want to be left alone. They want to have the freedom to do as they wish. It hurts them that there's a nation who is showing them that you're doing wrong and there's more to it than living the materialistic aspects of this world. They can't take that. So they stand against us, and Hashem protects us from them. And the Haggadah says, Sevel Amad. So it compares Lavan and Parah. Lavan. Well, let's start off with Parah. As we were saying, Parah is a normal type of protest against Klal Yisrael. He agrees with our existence, but it hurts him that we exist. So he tries to stop us performing our mission, puts us into slavery, doesn't give us time to think about learning Torah. He wants to stop us in our mission. He just wants to make us just ordinary people. But Lavan was Bikesh la'akor et hakol. He wants to uproot everything. He denied even the fact that there was something called Jews. He said, "You're mine. You come from my daughters." His protest is a lot more profound than Parah's. Parah knows, he agrees that we are here. He just wants to stop us on our mission. And this is pretty much all our enemies. They come under that type of protest. They agree there's something called the Jew, but it hurts them, so they attack us. But Lavan didn't even hurt him that there was something called the Jew, because in his eyes there was no Jew. He denied our existence. Okay. Now what the Haggadah does is it shows how the story is told over by the Torah. It brings 4 Pesukim and expounds on those Pesukim. And through that, the story of the birth of a nation of Klal Yisrael is told. The Pesukim go through the whole pregnancy. Again, I'm going to take out just snippets from the Pesukim, and I think the rest is, I think can be expounded, each person on their own. It says, Yetziat Mitzrayim, we went down to Egypt by force. Hashem sent us down. We had to go down there. Yaakov was scared about going down to Egypt. And Hashem told Yaakov, Al tira meyerda Mitzrayim, do not fear going down to Egypt. Why? Because I'm going to make you into a great nation there. Our whole point of going down there was to continue this pregnancy in order to make us into a great nation. Don't fear going down to Egypt. Yaakov knew there was going to be a galut. Yaakov knew there was going to be an exile. But don't fear it. It's going to make you into a great nation. It was part of the pregnancy. It says that we went down Bimsei as very few, went down as 70 souls, and we came out as many millions, including the women and children. That also represents a pregnancy. In a pregnancy, a fetus, it grows at a rapid rate. You know, when a baby is born, it slows down. If it continues at the same rate, there'll be giants in this world. A pregnancy, a fetus grows at a very, very fast rate. So too, when we were in Egypt, we grew at an exceedingly fast rate, from 70 souls to a few million. The women had 6 babies at a time. It was rapid growth because this was a pregnancy. However, the Pesukim carry on and says, the Egyptians, they caused us to suffer. This was them protesting this nation being born. They answered this pregnancy with an attack. But Nitzak el Hashem, we cried out to Hashem. We cried out, and it says, that Klal Yisrael cried out to Hashem from the work, from the pain of the work. They cried out to Hashem, please save us. Now, although we said the whole time that Hashem created us himself, our redemption needs to be triggered we needed to start it. We needed to cry out to Hashem, and then Hashem will put the process, we'll get the process rolling. Now, it's specifically that crying out from the midst of the work, because this is a true cry out to Hashem. Because again, we explained in the times of Leilat, the times of night, the times when we feel that Hashem has forgotten about us and that we're treading on. If we cry out to Hashem in those times, we're showing that we believe that Hashem still loves us and Hashem's waiting just to hear us cry out to him. This is a true prayer. We cried out to Hashem from the dirt, the times when the average person would think they're forgotten about. We still believe that Hashem was watching over us and that Hashem still loved us and Hashem still wants us to be his chosen nation. It says, and you know that Hashem saw our affliction. The Haggadah tells us Zu Prishat Derech Eretz. This is the Egyptians stopping the Jews having children. Again, this was how they. This was their protest. They tried to work us hard, stop us having children. They threw the boys into the Nile. They tried to stop this nation to be being born. Now Hashem says, "Vayetzu Hashem Mitzrayim." Hashem took us out of Egypt. It was Vayetzu Hashem. Hashem took us out. Wasn't through any messengers. The Haggadah tells us, "Lo yalidei malach." Wasn't through an angel. Lo yalidei saraf. Lo yalidei shliach. El HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvado of Atzmo. Hashem in his honor came down and he took us out. And this was not in any natural means. This was full miracles. The Haggadah tells us it was biyad chazakah, of Ezra Netoya, of Amara Gadol. What are these three things? Biyad chazakah. This wasn't a direct attack. Hashem gives life to everyone. But biyad chazakah was Hashem was just, he closed his hands, he stopped giving life. The Haggadah says, biyad chazakah zu hadeva. This is where the animals died. Hashem just stopped sustaining them. And this represents all the other makot, which Hashem he withheld providing them with life. His outstretched hand, that's a formal attack. The Haggadah says, this is the sword. This is the makot which Hashem attacked Egypt full force. Of Amara Gadol, the third one. This is Zugila Shechina. This is Hashem, when Hashem revealed his Shechina. Now, let's explain that a little bit. The first two, the Klal Yisrael didn't need to be protected. But when Hashem came down himself, when Hashem revealed his Shekhinah, Klal Yisrael had to put blood on their doorposts. They didn't need to do this for any other of the makot. They needed to separate themselves. They were saved. But when Hashem came down to kill the firstborns, they had to put a sign up. Why is that? And the answer is that when Hashem's Shekhinah comes down, it's so potent, no human can stand up in the midst of Hashem's Shekhinah. That's in the place where Hashem's Shekhinah is most potent is in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And only a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur can survive going into such potency of Shekhinah. No human being can stand up in the face of the potency of Hashem's Shekhinah. So how were we saved when Hashem came down through Makot Bacharot to kill the firstborns? He came down in his full glory. No human being can stand up in the midst of that potency. The answer is that Hashem made a place for us within him. We became part of him. That's why we weren't affected by the potency of his Shekhinah. Then this shows Hashem's love for us. He makes us part of him. This is what it means by Pesach. Hashem passed over us. Hashem made room for us within his Shekhinah. We were able to withstand the potency of his Shekhinah. And perhaps this is why we call Pesach, because this shows the affection that Hashem has for Klal Yisrael. He made a place for us within him. Okay, we're going to skip to the Dayanus. The Dayanus are very interesting. It goes to mention stage by stage, and if only Hashem did this, it would have been enough. Would it have been? Would it have been enough if Hashem, by the way, before I say that, I'm not elaborating on the Makot, because the Makot are not an essential part to the story of creating a nation. Because when Hashem came down, Hashem needs to reveal himself to the whole world. He did it through the Makot. We're not going to explain that in the meantime, but it's not an essential part of the story. Okay, so back to the Dayenu. What the Dayanus are saying is on every single stage, every single thing that Hashem did for us, if it was only that stage, that would have been enough to require us to be his representatives in this world by learning Torah and performing mitzvot. Okay, perhaps it wouldn't be good if Hashem didn't give us the Torah, didn't give us the Beis Hamikdash. But we're not saying it would have been enough in terms of like we didn't need more. It would have been enough at that stage for us to have an obligation to learn Torah and perform mitzvot, because at that stage we were already his chosen nation, and it was our obligation to be his representatives in this world. Okay, we're really almost there. Last little bit. The most important part of the Haggadah. Rabbi Gamliel says we could have explained the whole story. We could have lived it. But if we don't mention these three things, the Pesach, Matzah, and Maror, we haven't fulfilled the obligation of the Seder. Why is that? If we remember, if we go back to the She'enu Yodei Lishol, we said it was because of this that Hashem took us out. This whole story of Hashem, of Hashem creating us to be his representatives and living it and feeling it, that's not good enough. We have to actually be his representatives in this world by performing the mitzvot. That's why if we don't do the Pesach, Matzah, or Maror, we haven't fulfilled the point of us being a chosen nation. And it's specifically through these three mitzvot, because these three mitzvot show us how to be Hashem's chosen nation. The Pesach, that represents Hashem's attitude towards us. He made us part of him. We said that through Hashem passing over us by giving us a place within his Shekhinah. And that shows that we are part of him, which means that we are his representatives in this world, and we have an obligation to show the world Hashem's will. The matzah, what does the matzah represent? The matzah was we eat matzah because the dough didn't have time to rise. Well, why didn't Hashem give them time? Why didn't Hashem prepare them a little bit? Why didn't Hashem tell them you need to make your bread? The answer is because when Hashem took us out, we were on a different wavelength. If we would have taken provisions, we would have been taking provisions as what slaves need. But we were taken out to be a chosen nation. We need different provisions than what a slave needs. Hashem takes us at different places, at different stages of our lives, according to what he seems fit is our mission in this world. And we have to be ready just to go wherever Hashem wants us, wherever Hashem feels that we will be fulfilling our mission. And in that new place, the provisions that we would have taken with aren't necessarily the right provisions that we need for our new job. So the Matzah represents that we always have to be prepared to go where Hashem wants us to go to fulfill our mission. And also, it teaches us to always be anticipating the final Yeshua that comes with a flick of a finger. And finally, the Maror. The Maror represents, again, we've spoken this already, that sometimes we feel when there's bitter times, when we're in exile, that Hashem doesn't want us anymore. We feel that perhaps that we don't have a point of being his chosen nation anymore. The answer is we always have a purpose of being Hashem's chosen nation, to represent him in this world. Just through the slavery in Egypt, we saw that Hashem had a point for us to go through that. We needed that as part of our pregnancy. So too, Hashem has a reason why he sends us into Galut. That's why we eat the Maror. And perhaps that's why we meant to eat the Maror after the Pesach and Matzah. That's not in the chronological order. First, we went through the bitter times, then Hashem passed over us, and then our bread didn't have time to rise. Why don't we eat the Matzah? Why don't we mention the Maror, then the Pesach and the Matzah? And the answer is because we can only really appreciate the hard times after the redemption. After the redemption, we realize why we needed to go through the slavery in Egypt, because without that, we wouldn't have been the chosen nation. This is what the Maror is representing. So the Pesach represents our mission. We are part of Hashem, therefore we need to represent him. The Matzah tells us how to do it. And the Maror is that Galut, the exile, doesn't contradict our mission. Just a few more minutes. The Chol Dor Vador. The Haggadah tells us in every generation, Chayav Adam Lirot et Asmo Ki'ilu Hu Yetziat Mitzrayim. In every generation, we need to feel as if we ourselves came out of Egypt. Now, if we've understood this story, there's a whole story of the birth of a nation. And Hashem did it himself. And he did it because he chose us, because he feels that we are the special people who are able to represent him in this world. And Hashem chose every single one of us at that time. He hand-selected you and me. Now we can feel that we came out of Egypt. Because what does coming out of Egypt mean? It means that we were part of that nation that was born in Egypt. And our creation means that our existence is dependent on being Hashem's, on being Hashem's representative in this world. Now, after we feel that, we should be aroused and excited that Hashem chose us to be his chosen nation. We just lived it. We just experienced it. We just read how Hashem chose you and me. Now we are aroused to sing praises to Hashem, which leads us onto the Hallel. And we only say the first 2 paragraphs of Hallel. And that is for a reason. Because the first paragraph explains how Klal Yisrael give praise to Hashem. That not that Hashem is above and we're below. Hashem is with us. How Mashpili Lirat, he comes down and watches over us. He picks up those who are in the dust. Hashem's looking after us. Hashem loves us. Hashem chose us. And the next paragraph, the Yetziat Mitzrayim, speaks about the awe that the whole world has of us, the chosen nation, the nation that Hashem chose to be his representatives in this world. And they tremble. Hayam Ra'av Yanos, the sea saw and it fled. Hayarden Yesav le'achad, the Jordan River also it fled back. Haharim Rakadu Ke'elim, the mountains skipped like rams. Gvat Kivnei Son, and the hills like lambs. The whole world just trembles when we walk through, because we are the chosen nation. We are the nation that's here to represent Hashem in this world. And this finishes Maggid. This finishes the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. I hope that the way we've understood it, that we'll be able now to read Maggid and see the story, the full story, the story that Hashem created a nation, and Hashem did it with his own hands. He did it by himself. And why Hashem did it? Because Hashem wants ambassadors in this world to represent him, and that's through learning Torah and Mitzvot. And every single one of us need to know that Hashem hand-selected us. That gives us the obligation to be his representatives in this world. That tells us what our mission is. And we also know that Hashem will never let our enemies stand against us, because they protested, but Hashem has a need for us. When we read the story, now we know what emunah we're giving over to our children, that they were hand-selected by Hashem, and they have a mission to perform because of that. And we can also feel how we were taken out of Egypt, because we understand that it wasn't being taken out of Egypt, we weren't there. It was a matter of creating Klal Yisrael, and we were all part of that creation. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this will enhance your Seder. Have a good night.